All right, we're now moving on to old guns.
Old guns. This is going to be you.
All right, Alex, I will take old guns for 100.
And Ian will win.
And old guns for 100 is Ed, who says, Karl, as a really good long-range shooter, what is, in your opinion, the best sniper rifle of World War II? Also, if the U.S. government didn't involve themselves with the foul development and it was to manufacture, say, true assault rifle, do you think the AR-15 would have been invented later down the line or not currently exist?
Well, let's go with the first question, and I want you to chime in on this too.
Yeah, best sniper of World War II.
Yeah, this is a hard one because here's the thing. I only want to give information, qualified data on something I've used. I haven't used them all. I've only used some of them. So what I can tell you, I can definitely tell you which are not the best.
Okay.
The G43 is not the best. The G43 is not a good sniper rifle. It might be a DMR, and it's not even that. It's a battle rifle. It happens to have an optic tacked onto it, which they went, oh, we're going to DMR this thing. It wasn't meant for that. So the G43 is not it. The American 1903 Springfield A4, not it. The scope sucks. The scope is horrible. And by the way, it does not quick detach like in Band of Brothers, or not, excuse me, in Private Ryan either. But the scope is so bad that it is absolutely not a contender.
And you do have, not an original, but a reproduction one of those. We've done some shooting with it.
And it sucks. The 1891 30s, whatever, Nagant sniper.
Mm-hmm. There were a couple. The PU, the PU is the common one. With
I'm thinking of the PU, although there's the PE as well. I have a PU, and it's a legit one. That's really nice. It's got the crappy chin weld, but boy, those guns work. I don't like Nagants in general, but the snipers are overhauled, and that thing does the job, and the scope is particularly good. The scope actually tracks, the BDC actually seems to work. When a BDC actually works, when you screw it to 3 and shoot at 3 and hit stuff at 3, you're like, what wizardry is this? Because BDCs never do that, and my Nagant sniper does. And so in that regard, I'm quite impressed with that. Okay. Of all of the World War II era snipers I've shot, and let me clarify, of the ones I have fired, that'd be the one I pick. Okay. Even over the Kar 98 variants, because the Kar 98, and I've shot a few of those, although replica ones, although close replicas, the scope mount systems are a disaster. They're terrible. The German mounting systems in World War II were fragile, prone to being knocked out of alignment things.
Contrary to what people might expect, the Germans did not start the war with a really good sniper program.
No, they discarded them, in fact.
The Russians had a really good sniper program and were developing it. The Germans kind of had to play catch up.
They scrambled.
Figure it out.
And so, for example, most of the German mount systems, the windage is in the mounting system, and the windage isn't necessarily adjustable on the scope. And if you bump it, it will get knocked out of alignment.
And it's unscrew this side and then tighten this side to match, and those things are a mess.
If you ever windage zeroed one of those types of turret mount things, you want to start breaking stuff. I mean, I did it on a Yugoslavian gun, which is the same mounting system, and I wanted to kick some puppies afterwards. I mean, it is. I would not kick puppies. I love animals, but do you feel that way? Yeah. And that German, I haven't experienced all the German mounting systems, but the ones I've dealt with suck.
Well, what about the opposite end of the spectrum, the Arasakas? It is absolutely no problem to zero them because you just can't.
They just come zeroed. They may not have, the problem with that is that you and I both have experience shooting Japanese sniper rifles, except all of them are mismatched, and therefore they don't have a zero, and therefore there's no way for us to understand if they were viable or not. Right. So, the one that comes to mind, and this is in book learning only. I've handled them but never used them. Is the Anfield. Okay. The Mark IV, the T. Yeah. We call it the T. The Mark IV
Number
T.
4 Mark 1 T.
Number 4 8C, old guns. But I've handled them. The glass is nice. The gun handles well. The mount looks right. It looks sufficiently rigid. Mm-hmm. That could very well be the contender. And that's generally, I see that when I see people writing about this topic, they almost always say that's the one.
I would tend to agree.
I've never used it, though. So when I talk about something as what's the best one, I only can tell you what I've used. And from the ones I've used, I would say the most in the Nagant PU. The PE would be a very similar contender, although the PU was a simplification of the PE.
Yes.
And that in terms of book learning, I would say that the Enfield is a potential contender.
Yeah, I think I would agree.
But I know for a fact it's not the Springfield, and it's not the G43, and it's not the German guns either.
And it's not the M1C.
No. Oh, that I've shot. Okay, let me add to that. You're right. I've shot M1C and M1D. The scope on the M1C and the M1T is a demagnifier. You're better off with the irons, and it's offset to the left so you can get the clips in, and it's a complete steaming dumpster fire of a gun. It really is. If you guys like them, cool. But practically, sucks.
Yeah.
Absolutely sucks.
And the SVT-40 was a dismal failure of a sniper rifle.
Well, it had a wandering first shot 0 for one.
It was intended to be a sniper rifle. Once they got it into production, they realized they could not actually get reliable, repeatable first-round hits. And that is why there is a Mosin Nagant PU. They developed the PU scope for the Tokarev rifle. When it failed, they went, well, shit. I guess we'll make them out for Mosins.
And I will say this, and this is not a germophile thing. I'm squinting at the camera angrily. However, I have fired extensively the SVT-40 and the G43. And when you properly gas a G43, the G43 is a far better rifle than the SVT. The SVT is a big old pike. The gas system's never right. It's either too much or too little. It just is. It's either too much or too little. It's gas sensitive. You have to adjust it with different lots of ammo.
Yeah, we found that. We had a match where you were shooting.
Oh, I've had more than one do that on me. More than one. So this is more than one sample. And I also have a G43 that I properly gas with aftermarket gas system stuff. The gun handles well. The magazines are actually interchangeable. Yep. It's sufficiently accurate to do its job, 3 MOA-ish. The recoil is very minimal. The scope does hold 0. It's a better gun. I'm sorry, guys. It is. It's now is it as durable? I don't know. But when it's properly gassed, the G43 is a better rifle than the SVT-40.
Neither of them, however, are sniper rifles.
No, neither one is a sniper rifle.
Okay, then second part of the question: if the U.S. had not gotten its fingers dirty with 308, would the FAL? Let me rephrase this question: if the FAL had been produced in 280. Would we have an AR-15?
You're more aligned to answer this.
That's a maybe. I don't know. So the 280 it's a lot closer to 7.62 NATO than it is to 5.56. It is technically considered an intermediate cartridge, I think, but it's not that much less than 7.62 NATO.
Is it an intermediate cartridge like 6.5 Arasaka's an intermediate cartridge?
It's 130 grains at, I believe, 25 or 25.50 feet per second.
Oh, no.
So
the Arasaka's more intermediate than that is.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Yeah.
Now, that does make a difference. I have actually fired EM2s in both 7.62 NATO and 280, and the 280 is a noticeably nicer gun to shoot. Mm-hmm. And the FAL was originally developed for the 280 cartridge, and I think the FAL has a lot of fans because of its history of service, but I think if you had the chance to shoot one in 280 side by side with 7.62 NATO, I think a lot of people, especially if you didn't tell them what the guns were, would pick the 280. I think it'd be a better gun in like every way. It's smaller, it's shorter, it's lighter, less recoil impulse. It's just better. Now the question is the 280 a light enough cartridge to still be in use today and have like leapfrogged the AR-15 or the 5.56 cartridge? Right. 308 was too much, led to 5.56, and now there are people who are advocating that we should go up a little bit higher, the 6.5s, the 6.8s. I don't know. That's a really interesting question. I think the question is if we hadn't gone so overkill on the 308. Would there have been a need? Would people have been pushing to have something substantially lighter? And maybe the answer to that is no. The nice thing that you would get with 280 is it actually works really well as a general purpose machine gun cartridge too. Mm-hmm. Which is the reason that we still have 308 around today is that 5.56 makes a kind of a crappy mounted heavy medium machine gun. Sure. And
it's a terrible barrier penetrator too.
Right. Yeah. It's fine for a squad automatic weapon, but that's why we have a SAW and still the FN Mag or the 240.
Or now the M27 IAR.
No, I mean for a machine gun.
Oh, but I mean the SAW is being replaced.
Right, yeah. It does not work as a fixed machine gun cartridge. If you had 280 for everybody, maybe it kind of does. In fact, it does. It would work just fine.
So you've got one round for everyone.
Exactly. And the question is would that infantry rifle still be considered too much oomph for an infantry rifle? I think with 280 you have a rifle that's not really usable in full auto. 5.56 is. You can shoot bursts with 5.56 at pretty decent ranges and still be effective with it.
Yeah.
But 280, now granted, my experience with this is like 3 bursts, three 2-round bursts ever, but it's substantially heavier recoil than a 5.56.
The thing is, I have a hard time with this because I haven't, thankfully, ever had to shoot people with 5.56. I have hunted with it. 5.56 with the right projectile choice, just like with 9mm, right projectile choice, that's a damn effective round. And I've also shot 5.56 effectively out to 1,000 yards in terms of accuracy. So now, terminal ballistics at that range is a different argument. I get that. Right. Well, but I mean, projectile matters, and this is where we're getting into with the What Would Stoner Do gun and the 75 versus 77 versus now M855A1 and all that. But you know, it's hard to give up on appreciating the amount of low recoil ass kicking in that 30-round magazine.
It's true.
You know, the thing is, there's so minimal recoil with 5.45 and 5.56 that using it in close quarters and getting lots of bursts out real fast and hitting stuff and having no disruption of your situational awareness is hard to appreciate unless you've done it, whether it's a match environment or for the real world. And being able to then use that same gun, lay down, and take a single shot hit and hit something at 400 yards is another, wow, until you've done it, an impressive thing. And 5.56 and 5.45 both do bring that to the table.
They do. Yeah.
And this is the problem I come to this, is when we talk about this, is how much are we hearing of this being a problem? And no offense to anyone out there, I'm not trying to say this, but how much of this problem exists because I hit that guy and he didn't die and you actually didn't hit that guy? This happened with the M1 carbine in Korea. There's a whole bunch of stories about I fired my whole M1 carbine into this Korean guy whose quilted jacket stopped the bullet. And we know that's not true. We know that's not true.
No.
Provably not true. We also know the M2 carbine is provably uncontrollable and fires all over hell and back when you dump with it. There's a much better chance the Korean guy didn't get hit.
And there's also a legitimate thing about the terminal effectiveness
No,
of the carbine.
Agreed. But 5.56 is going to be a more terminal effect than 30 carbines.
Definitely.
And so there's some of this is, how much of this is a memoir that's unfortunately an erroneous memory?
Right.
From I shot him and he didn't die, or is it I shot him and I missed and didn't realize it?
The British during World War II did some studies of infantry weapons as
Yeah.
a part of trying to determine what is the best course, what do we need to have in new weaponry that we're offering to the Tommies. And they actually came to the conclusion that a majority of infantry units were not capable of providing useful feedback. They didn't, to put it crudely, they didn't know enough about their guns to be able to intelligently comment on what they ought to have or how they should be improved.
It's a hard conversation to broach because we don't want to undermine veterans, and and it's not about that.
Right.
The thing is that memory, human memory in general, is a very corrupted thing.
And an anecdote takes on a whole meaning of its own if the one time you had to shoot someone with your M16 and it failed or it didn't stop the guy,
You're going to hate it forever.
and you have every right to. That's how humanity survives as a species, is when it fails once, you don't do that again.
I come back to the 9mm 45 thing, which we know has been beaten into the earth, and this feels so similar in that what works when bullets hit things, squishy things that need to die, is shot placement.
Yeah.
Or shot placement can be done with a single shot that's precision, which is placed with precision. Shot placement can also be done with a burst of fire that happens to strike the target, and eventually one of them hits the important bit.
Yep.
And these low-power cartridges like 5.45 and 5.56 makes that second option, and we've seen this in the match, easier to do. Like, I went up and just go, blam, 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 and had a better time than you.
Right.
And 3 of my 4 shots, 2 of them suck, and 2 of them are square in the A zone. Well, that would work on a person too.
Yeah.
And so I think that's part of what we're seeing. Now, the problem with 5.45 and 5.56 is they're bad barrier penetrators, and we know that. You can hide behind stuff real easy with these rounds.
Yeah.
That's a problem.
You can hide behind a bush.
Well, you might.
We've
seen bushes, believe it or not. 5.56 can be deflected so badly with bushes that a bush could be cover, not concealment.
Yeah.
Now, I wouldn't want to rely on that, but it's possible.
Yeah.
And so, I don't know. I keep going back to this in my experience in matches as well as with hunting, which is on living things. No offense to anyone that's anti-hunting, but I do hunt a little here and there. 5.56, man, when you do it right, things die.
Now, all of that being said, I can give you the actual true answer to this question, which is that it's totally random and unpredictable because a substantial amount of weapons procurement has absolutely nothing to do with the quality of the weapon in question. It has to do with all sorts of other political factors. Who's building it? Who's designing it? What are we competing against? The reason, for example, that the British didn't adopt a self-loading rifle during World War II, they totally recognized that that would be a way to improve infantry effectiveness. However, they decided it was more important to spend their time on operational level things like combined arms, air, naval, artillery, that would simply reduce the need for effective infantry in the first place.
We see this as a recurring theme where people think rifles win wars and they don't.
No.
Rifles help force multiply a squad or you, but they don't win wars.
Right.
And so a very backwards rifle the country can still win the war because the things that win the war aren't the rifle. We see this with the Trapper Springfield.
Yeah.
Trapper Springfield sucked. It really did compared to the things of its day, but it didn't matter.
Right.
And you know where I think things went more awry than this example is rechambering the M1 in 30-06.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
That was more of a big wrong decision.
The 276 Pedersen's not that much different than the 280 British.
But doing the M1,
this whole thing by 50 years.
I got to not shoot, but handle one of those. And oh my God, the gun handles better. Yep. It just feels better. It's lighter.
Yep.
It holds 10 rounds, not 8.
Yep.
And it has more rounds, less recoil.
I've shot a Pedersen rifle in 276, and it's a fantastic rifle to shoot.
So imagine that in an M1.
That would have been awesome.
That might have changed things a lot. That might have changed the way weapons were designed for a long time.
Yes. Yeah.
That's where things really went awry, and when forcing the M1 into a 30-06 wasn't the worst decision ever, but it really did.
Sure wasn't the best.
It went down the wrong path.
Yep.
Yeah.
And again, it had nothing to do with anyone thinking OPT6 was better.
No.
That was done because we had a lot of it and not a lot of money, and also the question of the economics of rechambering all of the other guns in the arsenal, all the machine guns for 276.
And you want to have to field the military with a couple different rounds.
Right.
That's another problem, too.
No, absolutely not. We can't have that. We'll just invent 30 carbine instead.
Well, touche.
All right, moving on. Christopher, I have a question of guns of the Old West. I'm not sure if you're still answering them.
Sure.
Yes, we like Old West guns. I wanted to ask about modifications to guns, specifically target sights on revolvers. Many of the reproduction percussion revolvers today have target sights. Is there any historical basis for this? In my experience, many of today's shooters change out the factory sights for something better. Was this the case back then as well, or did they just get what they want with what they had? Get by with what they had?
Well, for one, most of the designs at the time did not have easily interchangeable sights. The sights were permanently affixed to the gun. So, for example,
integral to the frame.
Exactly. Like a single action armley, it's a slot down the frame and a welded on or brazed on front sight.
Yep.
Now, guys did do stuff. They would customize them. They would cut off the front sight and put on a silver coin or put on some German silver, or they would put on... People that were really into it would modify their guns. However, modifying your guns with target sights in those days meant going to a legitimate gunsmith, not dovetailing something out and putting something else in, and having him modify the gun in a significant way.
Right.
And people did do it. There are examples of it. You'll see it on percussion guns. You'll see it on single-action armies. You'll see it on I would say the thing that's most likely closest to a match gun from the Old West would be a Bisley.
Yep. Which was actually factory made with an windage adjustable rear sight.
It's kind of maybe not the first time, but it's the best example of a time where Colt decided we're going to make a gun designed for match shooting specifically, and the Bisley grip and they did sights on that too, adjustable sights.
Yeah, trigger and hammer, a lot of modifications.
That was their match version of the Colt single action army. However, the Bisley came about in 1890s.
Something like that. Yeah.
Late in terms of what you would call the Old West. So guys that wanted to do some sort of match shooting, and by the way, there were matches in the Old West. There's documented evidence of that, in which Doc Holliday did very badly in many of them. But there were guys that made match guns, but it wasn't like today. It wasn't go buy a gun and make it put on cool match sights. It was, I'm really into this. I'm going to spend a whole ton of money to have someone modify it in an irreversible way.
And a lot of this stuff, there were more. I was going to say there were more customizable options from the factory. Yeah, and in some ways that's true. It's probably more true with rifles.
Pistols too. In fact, there's examples of letters, like in fact from Tombstone, of all places, close to my heart, of guys sending in letters to Colt. I would like a Colt single action army chambered in 44 Winchester centerfire with a 4 3/4 barrel, and I'm kind of almost quoting this, made in the most exemplary way possible. Yes. Stainless or not stainless, nickeled from tip to toe, engraved, blah, 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 blah. People ask for stuff like with ivory grips. Like, you could have the company make that for you.
Yeah. And what I'm picturing specifically some of the Winchester catalogs with rifle sights. You had like 12 different options for what style of sight. Everything from buckhorns to flip-up rear tang aperture sights with 12, that were basically sliding wheels on the gun.
From the factory.
Right.
Yeah.
So where today you're just going to buy the gun and then go buy whatever sort of sights you wanted, that was something where, given the fact that you did have to take it to someone who's actually reasonably skilled in order to do some of this work, maybe you're just better off getting what you want straight from the factory, and the factory would accommodate that.
The guns were less modular, and therefore you got it in the way you wanted it from the factory, until like today, where they just push out a gun. Here's a Glock 17, have fun. And then you go buy your aftermarket bag of Glock 17 things, right?
Right. Yeah.
One place you mentioned buckhorn. One thing you do see changed out regularly is the rear sight on lever guns, or other guns, but mostly lever guns. They would punch out that rear sight, which was kind of a precision sight, and they would stick in either a full or half buckhorn, which was kind of like this. It was kind of a ghost ring.
Yeah.
And the guys in the field that realized what those guns were for, which was using them like assault rifles. We have a video about that, I think. That turned into a ghost ring of the time, and it was far quicker acquisition.
Yep. And
so you see that a lot.
Yeah.
You do see that a lot.
Yeah. And that sort of thing it has to be less precisely made.
Oh, yeah.
So.
Crude.
Yeah, we've seen some interesting ones.
Very crude.
Handmade buckhorn sights.
Very crude.
Let's see. Sean, I was going to ask this on Forgotten Weapons, but hearing both your opinions would be awesome. Given that the flintlock was in service for almost 200 years, and the matchlock was 100 years of use before that, how long do you think the current plateau will be? Muzzle-loaded, non-primer, cap-style firearms were in use for like 400 plus years, and then primers changed everything. What do you think will change everything now? Is it still optics and materials, as you said before, or maybe something different? I'm sticking with optics and materials. Something will change. Will it be, are we going to go to like lasers? Just go straight to, it's conceivable that overnight we could have some technological revolution in energy storage, and all of a sudden I can fit a gigawatt of power in a 9-volt battery. Or that might be total science fiction, and that might not happen for 1,000 years.
I'm going to go ahead and just continue to stick with optics and materials, which is what you see us doing with the What Was Done Energy project. And one of the things I find interesting is, like, how do you get away from the basic principle of a projectile going through the adversary? So, for example, when you look at an energy weapon, it's the very definition of ice pick.
It's true.
Dude, I mean, so we talk about bullets that don't expand or don't cavitate when they hit a person, and therefore do not do enough terminal ballistics. What is a laser weapon going to do? It's going to ice pick. It's going to literally make a small hole.
That's true.
Unless it cuts like a beam, like a freaking lightsaber or something. The point being is, no, I don't think that's going to change for a long time.
Well, energy, if we have that kind of dense energy storage, it might not be laser, it might be an electromagnetic.
But then it's a projectile
Weapon.
That's fair.
But that would change things. If you have an electromagnetic projectile, you don't have to worry about heat in the barrel because you don't have that friction.
I could see more fly-by-wire type stuff on guns. So, for example, electronically controlled triggers, electronic sighting systems.
Yes, definitely.
I think that there could be maybe caseless ammunition someday. Maybe.
That could be something that really takes off, or it could be something like the wheel lock that kind of sits there as an exotic thing and an option, and then whatever new technology we get just blows it out of the water practically.
It's a boring answer, but I think it's sighting systems and materials.
The problem is, kind of by definition, what will end the plateau is something we can't predict now.
Maybe something could happen with propellants that allow you to get, or barrel material that allow you to get much higher velocities without barrel wear.
Maybe.
And you could turn 5.56 into something that's incredible, like 22.250. I mean, just imagine pushing those bullets out at 4,500.
Sure.
I don't know. But that would change things.
Even that wouldn't be a real fundamental change.
Well, it would be flatter.
Yeah.
But I mean,
doesn't change how far, ultimately, none of this changes how far away you can see somebody. From an infantry rifle perspective.
No, but this is where the fly-by-wire comes in, and you start getting into merged electronics and systems. Like, for example, sighting system on your helmet that's no longer on the rifle, and then that's going to come.
Yeah, I think, and quickly. I think for a while, and it's going to jump. It will not be long before you turn around and realize, holy cow, this is all
the cyber warrior thing is real.
Integration of standard firearms into modern technology will be a huge thing.
That, I think we are going to see guys running around doing that way sooner than 10 years.
For all we know, they're already doing it.
They are. I'm going to guarantee you they already are. I'm going to guarantee it.
Yeah.
But I think we're going to see it as normal.
Yeah. You'll turn around and be like, when did this happen? Kind of like, when did everyone start carrying a smartphone? Because how many years has it been? Not that many.
And it's completely changed the world.
And it's total de facto.
And that's what's going to happen with standard weapon systems is they're going to become more and more digitally augmented and integrated.
Yeah. All right. Dave says, hey guys, shot any 8mm Kurtz lately?
No.
And it makes you sad.
We're still waiting for our STG. It's coming. We've been talking to Mac. He says he said it's on. It's coming. He keeps saying it. I believe him. And pretty imminently is what it sounds like.
Yeah, they're definitely getting really close.
They are getting close. They're going to happen. They keep putting up pictures of these coming. But it's just, I mean, it's like anything else. They want to get it right.
Yep.
And they're going to get it right. And I'm pretty sure we're going to be one of the first ones on the block to play with them. So we'll be able to bring that to you guys.
Yep.
But no, not yet.
I don't want one before it works.
No.
The worst thing is you get it and then it doesn't work.
I would hate to have to do a video of that thing not working.
Yeah.
That would suck.
I don't want to have to send it back.
No, well, but I would hate to have a video of that. And by the way, we would do that.
Yeah.
If the gun came and it didn't work, we will tell you. I'm telling you, we will.
Yeah.
But we don't want to do that video. So when we talk to him, we're like, make sure whatever you bring us works, because we don't want the alpha. The beta's okay if the beta works. Like if there's a clutch here and there, that's fine. But we want it to work because we want to be able to come to you guys and go, this thing's good to go.
Yeah.
And he's working on that to make sure that that's the case, and that's what we're waiting for.
Yep. And we don't have anything else in 8 Kurz.
No, nothing. Not a darn thing. I'm ready to get a custom barrel manufacturer to make me an AR in 8 Kurz just so I can do it.
I've toyed with doing the 44 point thing.
Yeah, that would be fun. Yeah.
I don't know. Well, I'll tell you what,
that would be
great fun watching you shoot.
That would be fun. I would shoot it.
I know.
Yeah, I'd totally shoot it.
Yeah, I'd totally let you. All right, Max says, what, in your opinion, is the most bang for your buck CNR gun? Cheers from a broke college student who loves history and firearms but has no money.
I'm going to let you hit this.
I am going to continue at this point to say Swiss straight pulse.
Yeah, that's a good answer.
Now, there's some criteria to this. Are you looking for a gun that's interesting historically and mechanically and a cool collectible? Or are you looking for something that you're going to do a lot of shooting with? Because if you want to do a lot of shooting, you need to have cheap and available ammunition. And for that, I think your best bet might still be an SKS. That's hard.
They're going up in value, though.
They are, but for a cheap shooter, you're looking at 5.56 or 9mm or 7.62x39. There's not really any mil-cert stuff in 9mm for rifles. So 5.56 or 7.62x39. There's not really any mil-cert.
You know what?
5.56, certainly not cheap.
No.
So that comes down to 39, and you're looking at AKs and SKS.
This is printer ink.
Yeah.
You could still get a pretty cheap K31.
Yes.
And you can still get pretty cheap 7.5 Swiss. But that's going to pewter out.
60 cents a round for 7.5 Swiss.
You can still definitely get really cheap 7.62x39.
Yep.
Your SKSs are at this point where people look at the price and go, what the hell, $450? However, you will save enough on printer ink, i.e. ammunition,
yeah,
that probably is still your best bang for your buck.
And a K31 is going to be 300 plus.
And now you have a semi-auto.
Yeah, it's a more practical gun.
But
it's totally legit that maybe it really is the beginning of a gun collection. You'll shoot it once in a while, but that's not the main purpose. And if that's the case, those K31s those things would be so freaking expensive if they were brand new today.
Oh, they're works of art.
They are literally the definition of best bang for your buck right now. Swedish Mausers are excellent in that way, although they're not as widely available as the Swiss stuff. I keep bringing up the Swiss guns recently because a huge glut of them got brought in, and they're still available pretty much retail these days. You can kind of take your pick. Do you want the K11, the G11, the K31? Buy them all. Get the whole batch. And eventually, when those things dry up on the retail level, I really think those prices are going to
K31s are going to become incredibly valuable.
In fact, an interesting counterpart to that are the Lottie pistols, the M40 semi-auto pistols. That they're bulky and heavy, and they're single stack mags, and they're kind of like, but they're interesting. They got accelerators in them and stuff. And I swear I remember those things being like $250 when they came in.
Oh, dude, SKS used to be $90.
True. But then those Lotties dried up, and if you want one now, it's $800 or more. And that's like, why didn't I buy these when they were cheap?
I agree with your conclusions. I would actually push towards the SKS because of the printer ink argument. Sure. However, the K31 will have more value in the long run.
Yeah.
But people are going to ask this because I'll throw it at you. Why not the most in the Gaunt? They're $90.
They're not $90.
Well,
they're $250 now.
Are they?
Yes.
You can get them for $150, $200 still, or you can still get them for $100.
No, you can't.
Really?
You showed me $100 Mosin.
All right.
They're $200 now. The ammunition is going up in price.
It is.
And he didn't say cheap. He said bang for his buck. Which would you rather have, a K31 or a K31 or two 9130s?
I'd rather have a K31 than 10 9130s unless I could sell them.
And there is the answer to your question.
Yeah, no, I'm serious. And I mentioned earlier the 9130 sniper is cool, but that's a different thing.
Yeah.
A regular old beat-up CNR 19 Mosin Nagant,
pile of junk.
It's a piece of shit. Sorry, guys. It is. It's a
now the heyday for the Mosins was when they were $89 or $99.
Sure.
Then finding the interesting.
And there was spam cans of ammo laying everywhere. You like literally walk into a gun store and trip over it.
But even then, you didn't buy the $99 World War II, the 1942 reefer rifle. That's when you found the Finnish ones and the M90 ones from World War I and the Westinghouses and the Remingtons, and bought them for $150 because the ubiquitousness of the standard rifle brought all the values down.
The Mosin Nagant, I will go ahead and say this, the Mosin Nagant is only popular because at one point it was cheap and ubiquitous.
Yes.
There is no other reason for that rifle to be popular.
Right.
All right, sorry.
Even though as a sniper, you like them.
That's a different gun. It's been gone over and it works. No, it really is a different thing. I'm talking about these beater surplus guns.
Right.
They're bad.
And man, you don't want really a rifle as a shooter that was made by the Russians in 42. Let's think about what was the state of Russian manufacturing in the middle of 1942.
Yeah.
You know what? I don't want a rifle that came out of Mauser Oberndorf in 45 either.
I don't think there's ever been a safety issue with these guns.
But
they're just roughly manufactured.
Yeah.
And then the other thing that is, there's a cool factor. The M44 is a freaking cannon.
Yes.
But you know what? If you're actually trying to shoot for score or shoot in a match or actually do anything that's beyond, wow, this is a cannon, it gets old fast.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, wow, I love getting kicked in the chest every time I pull this trigger. It's so fun.
And not hitting it.
Yeah.
I can take getting kicked in the chest if I can.
Oh, well, people are going to chime in and say, I hit stuff all the day long.
I know, they're all sniper rifles.
Great.
All right, moving on. I think we've expended that one.
Yeah.
Trey says, what are the advantages and disadvantages of a peep rear sight over a U or V rear notch sight? I personally loathe peep sights, and I find target acquisition and accuracy better, for me at least, using notch sights.
Sorry, Trey, I'm going to have to disagree with you on this one vehemently. And this is even though I use lots of German guns or have because of my historical interest. The V-notch and barleycorn sight on the Mauser lends itself to a fairly quick sight picture for what is a bolt-action rifle, but it's never a very precise sight picture. It's very hard to tell when you're losing or gaining elevation, or you're just kind of straining on windage a little bit on that, and it just doesn't do the same thing for me. Now, this could be an American thing, but when I bring up a peep sight, for me, my eye automatically and naturally centers the front sight post in the center of that aperture, and I believe it provides a more precise, repeatable sight picture.
I will absolutely agree. I would say I think a U-notch is better than a V-notch. If I had a U-notch and a flat front post, as compared to a V-notch and a barleycorn, which is a pyramidal front post, I'd rather have a U-notch. I think that's more precise.
I think the V-notch and a barleycorn is fine on an express sight for like hunting in Africa or something like that. But it's not precise enough for the ranges you expect these rifles to be engaged with. And I would agree with you that a U-notch and a post is better. And the best example to contrast the two are the Germans use the V-notch and barleycorn, and the Russians use the U-notch and post on an AK.
Ah, right.
And an STG-44 has the AK sight picture is better. And by the way, though, neither one, in my opinion, and I'm sorry, Trey, are as precise or as repeatable or as good as a aperture.
Totally agree.
Sorry.
Interesting point to point out. The Norwegians, when they took those, they had like 400,000 captured, surrendered German Mausers at the end of World War II. They refurbed those into 30-06 and gave them U-notches and flat front posts.
Which would have been an improvement. Yeah.
BRWaldo.
Oh, let me add one more thing to that. And I think let me flesh out why that's better.
Okay.
So you have this V-notch, and you've got a V-notch and a barleycorn. Your eye has a hard time perceiving the amount of light and gap between the barleycorn and what is the V-notch.
Right.
When you have a U-notch like this, and you have a post, you can make the amount of light between the edges of that post more consistent.
Yep. And the flat top of the post is easier to have precisely aligned with the top of the U.
How do you level this off with that?
Right.
It's much more challenging.
Yeah. Okay, BRWaldo says, what do you think of more traditional lever and bolt action rifles with modern doodads and features tacked on? Think things like lever guns with ghost ring sights and top rails for long high relief optics, or the idea of a scout rifle including things like a detachable box magazine. Is this usually just a gimmick or a valuable way of updating older platforms with more recent innovations?
My first question would be, why do you not just get a more modern rifle if you want that stuff? However, If it's not a historical piece that has some sort of provenance, I don't have a problem with it.
As long as it is not the Marlin tactical lever action with 12 pounds of Picatinny rails.
Well, no, you don't need that. But I mean, for example, throwing a red dot on an 1873 Winchester, as weird as that sounds, it would be a force multiplier for that gun.
If that had existed in 73, absolutely Winchester would have been thrilled to have that in the catalog.
So it seems weird, but if for some reason that's the gun you have or the gun you want to use, a red dot on an 1873 is definitely better than the iron sights on a 73.
Yeah.
So I don't see a problem with it. And again, I don't know why you wouldn't. There's if it's a historical piece and you're trying to maintain some sort of historicity, then obviously you don't do that.
Right.
But if it's a working gun,
sure,
go for it, man. And if a red dot, I'm just using red dot as the example, a red dot on a lever gun is a force multiplier just like it is on an M4.
Yeah. Long eye relief scope on a 30-30. Makes sense in that context.
I don't see any reason not to do it. There's nothing wrong with it. It's not like these are moral laws. I mean, go for it.
Right.
Yeah.
Mossberg totally took that way out of proportion.
Yeah, no. I mean, it's all within reason. Well, the amount of Picatinny rails on thing in general has gone over the top. And we're seeing a backtrack on that with things like M-Lock and Keymod.
Yeah.
But I mean, it got to the point where it's like, do you need Picatinny on your Picatinny on your belt, Picatinny on the gun, Picatinny on the rear of the gun, Picatinny on top of the gun, Picatinny on your helmet, Picatinny everywhere there isn't a place to put more Picatinny. And it got ridiculous. And when you look at these guns that have rails all over them, 10% of the rails have something attached to it.
Well, no, the main purpose of Picatinny rail is to sell Picatinny rail covers.
Well, you do need rail covers for your rails because you don't.
Otherwise, they turn your hands into a cheese grater.
You can take anything to an extreme, but throwing on something that's a force multiplier on your lever gun, go for it.
Yeah, or box mag conversions of
totally
bolt action.
I think it makes sense.
Yeah.
Yep.
Alrighty, we are on to the next.
How long have we been doing this? I have no idea.
3 days, I think, at this point. Modern discussions.
Yeah.
Gregory says, "Tell me about lasers. What are they good for? Why have one on a rifle that already has a red dot? I had a 1022 with an integral laser once and couldn't find a use for the laser. Why did Karl use the laser for that last 250-yard shot in hard as hell first stage?"
Okay, well, something's misunderstood.
Yeah, you did not use it.
I did not. I may have said something about the laser, but I did not use the laser. First of all, the reason one for lasers is because they're badass and you need a laser on your gun. I've seen all the Crimson Trace ads and you have to have one. Right?
Marketing is
the minute you have a laser on your gun, you're just force multiplied to the point where you just can't lose.
Right.
And you can aim under couch cushions and stuff.
Dude, if you had a laser on a shotgun and racked it,
oh, dude.
they wouldn't run away, they'd just fall over dead.
Oh,
right there.
Panic attack. You put the laser, not only did you rack it, he sees the dot, and he's like, oh no! And then he runs away. No.
It's fainting goats.
Yeah, fainting goats. You immediately make an assailant turn into a fainting goat. No, there are real reasons. First of all, let's go to the combative military application of lasers. The military application of lasers is for in low light, dusk, in CQB, inside structures. It is an alternative sighting system. That does not mean that you have to bring the gun to your shoulder to aim it like you would with a red dot or something like that. You can turn on your red dot or your red laser and you can aim with it like a beam or in a room from your hip. Yes, there is a thing about hip shooting or from a place that's an unconventional sight system, and you can get hits with that. You can also use it to, quote-unquote, paint a target, especially in IR, where you turn on your IR beam and you'll say, I see something over there, and you do like a halo or you point at it, or you can actually do a lasso thing. You guys should see, that was in, I think it was prominently displayed in 13 Hours, where they showed them doing lassoing with an IR laser. You can see it from air support or whatever, or where you are, you can indicate a position, as long as the opposition does not have nods.
Right.
So, but the best thing for a laser in that regard on the long arm is you can aim with it in unconventional positions, and you can use it for other things like painting targets to indicate things that you're seeing that someone else may not see, and you can do it in a way that's covert, especially with IR.
Yep. I would emphasize the ability to use them at night.
Yes.
Because it means you can wear night vision on your head and see whatever you want to look at, and also be able to aim your rifle without having to have your night vision mounted onto your rifle.
This can go into a deep dive conversation about night vision, and that's a whole other conversation. But having the night vision on your head means you can navigate terrain or a building or a structure, but you need to be able to sight with the gun. And you can do clever things like you can bend in with your red dot sight with your nods on your left eye. It's hard to do. It can be done. You can use the laser on your gun, and from your hip or even from your shoulder, that laser beam literally does look like a beam going off into space. You can aim with that, and as long as the opposition doesn't have night vision, you can do that without them seeing you are compromising your position and doing as such. You can also see where your squad is aiming at the same time. That's a huge thing, and having the night vision on your head means you can navigate in darkness.
Right.
You can go passive by putting the night vision on the gun and not using the laser and having it behind an optic, but now you have to navigate the terrain with the gun at the ready, looking through the gun, which is actually quite challenging.
Some people may not realize that even if you have something like an EOTech that is night vision capable, in order to use it, you have to have the night vision mounted on the rifle.
And focused properly.
You can't have the EOTech on the rifle and nods on your head and bring the rifle up and look at it through the nods on your head. It doesn't.
The focus won't be right. You could leave the EOTech on, bring it up and bend in it with your right eye and use the night vision with your left eye. I've tried it.
That sounds totally feasible.
It does work. Especially on a high mount.
Yeah, I'm sure it can.
It's very unpleasant.
That's why you have a laser.
Right. Now, but again, if you only have nods on your head and the opposition has night vision capability, you don't want to go active with a laser.
Right.
That might be something you need to do.
Sure.
But if they don't, you can use active, which means you're emanating a light. Right? Or, like I said, you can put the night vision on the weapon behind the sight, and then you focus the sight appropriately behind the scope you're using. And then the dot appears just like it would in normal day. Yeah. And there's also clip-on for weapon mounted at all. But by going weapon mounted, unless you have another night vision optic on your head, you've lost a lot of the ability to move.
All of a sudden, you can only see what you're pointing your rifle.
Which now you try running across the desert, which is relatively flat with no obstructions, looking through a weapon mounted night vision scope. You're going to eat shit. You need it on your head. You need it on your head. That's terrible.
Right.
But you need it on your head to do that. And obviously, the better thing, and you're seeing this now, multiple that gives you binocular vision.
Yeah.
So that's what the laser's for.
Short version, the laser is for night.
Well, lasers can have limited application for civilians, especially green, where you're not going to have night vision. Green lasers tend to go further and are more day visible than red. And Crimson Trace is not completely wrong in that, for example, you can, in occasional situations, do something clever like aim a gun under a barricade and use the laser for aiming. However, I will question the viability of that, and that part of the reason you're able to aim a laser when you bring a gun out and push out is that you're already indexing on the target.
Right.
When you put
know where to look for
when you put a gun under something in an unconventional sighting system or problem and turn the laser on, you're now fishing, literally fishing like this for the laser to find it, to see it, and then paint the target you're trying to shoot. If that target's being very complacent and standing there being like, please shoot me, that works. If it's not, and it's moving or coming at you, this is a very hard proposition.
Yeah.
So I think that lasers they're dubious to me in that application, and they're not worthless, but you can see worthless from there.
It's a human trick.
Yeah, no offense to Crimson Trace, they do make fine products, but they kind of hype the value of it. The other thing I would say is I did not use my red laser on any targets at hard as hell. The only reason the laser was on the gun is because I was testing out the configuration of the rifle with some extra gear on it in the way I may want it to be configured when I'm done, and I wanted to make sure that it maintained zero after the match. Right. So I zeroed that laser pre-match and then checked my zero post-match, which is not on video, and it did not lose zero, and that was part of my experiment.
Okay.